Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Nellie's Promise. Chapter 3, The Letter. Usually Nellie loved bedtime at Uncle Guard and Aunt Cornelia's house. Every night after Uncle Guard and Aunt Cornelia had come to wish them sweet dreams, Nellie and Samantha would whisper and giggle and talk about the day. Sometimes Nellie did the fluttery arm dance on their bed, and Samantha laughed so hard she had to bury her face in her pillow. Other times, Samantha and Nellie had so much on their minds and talked so long that Uncle Guard had to come to remind them that it was time to go to sleep. More than once, when this had happened, Uncle Guard had become caught up in their conversation, and Aunt Cornelia had to come find him and remind him that it was time for bed. But on the night of their visit to the settlement house, Samantha had curled up with her back to Nellie as soon as Uncle Guard and Aunt Cornelia turned off the light and left. Outside, a mournful wind blew. It rattled the windows as it trying to get in. Nellie almost wished the wind would whoosh through their room. Maybe it could be blown away the heavy silence between Samantha and her. Finally, Nellie sat up in bed and whispered, "Samantha?" "Yes," Samantha answered so softly that Nellie could hardly hear over the wind. Nellie asked, "Our trip to the settlement house upset you, didn't it?" "Yes," said Samantha. "I don't want to talk about it." Her voice sounded as though she was struggling not to cry. "Oh, Samantha," Nellie pleaded, we've always been able to talk about everything. Please, you've got to tell me why you're so upset." Nellie sat up in bed and hugged her knees. Samantha sat up in bed and hugged her knees to her chest. Nellie waited for her to speak. When she did, Nellie was shocked. She had never heard Samantha's voice sound so angry. "The truth is," Samantha said, "that I hated..." But Samantha didn't finish her sentence because just then the door burst open and two small white figures flew through the air, bounced onto the bed, and hid under the covers. "The wind is scaring us," Bridget's muffled voice wailed its moaning. "We don't like it," said Jenny. "Can we stay here with you and Samantha?" "Of course," said Samantha, all the anger in her voice replaced by gentleness, indulgence, and love. After a tremendous amount of wiggling and giggling, and many complaints about who had cold feet and who was hogging the pillows, Jenny and Bridget settled down to sleep. Nellie and Samantha would not continue their conversation about the settlement house and risk awakening the girls. Anyway, it was clear to Nellie that Samantha truly did not want to talk about what was troubling her. Nellie was awake for a long time that night, worrying and listening to the wind howl. Always before, through good times and terrible times, the one thing that Nellie had been sure of was Samantha's friendship. Now it felt like this friendship was in danger. Partly, it was Uncle Mike's fault. Nellie had always told Samantha everything before. The scary secret about Uncle Mike's reappearance was a wedge that separated her from Samantha. And now the separation had grown wider because of their visit to the settlement house. Of course, Uncle Guard and Aunt Cornelia meant well, but Nellie wished they had not praised her so much. Samantha must have thought that Nellie was showing off, trying to push herself between Samantha and Uncle Guard and Aunt Cornelia. Nellie completely understood how even the very best and kindest of friends, which Samantha was, would resent that. Nellie tossed and turned, sleepless and miserable. With all her heart, Nellie wanted to make things right between herself and Samantha. She just didn't know how. The next day, the sky was high and blue and fresh and clear. All traces of the sleet had disappeared. It was Saturday, so Uncle Guard did not have to go to his law office. Oh, so he's a lawyer. At breakfast, he announced, "It's a perfect day for a ride in my new motor car. Would you like to come?" Bridget and Jenny burst with enthusiasm. "Oh, please, I would," said Jenny. Me too, said Bridget. "I think I'll say no thank you, my dear," Aunt Cornelia said to Uncle Guard. "Samantha and Nellie, you should go. The fresh air will do you good. You look peaked, both of you. You were probably up too late talking again, as usual." Nellie did not meet Samantha's eyes. Fortunately, Bridget and Jenny demanded everyone's full attention. They bounced out of their seats, started off, and returned with their coats, and Nellie's and Samantha too. The big girls had to help the little girls put their coats down and button them before they put on their own. All the while, Brett and Jenny were so giddy and gleeful that their chatter covered up the silence between Nellie and Samantha. When all four were ready to go. They skittered out of the front door and climbed to Uncle Guard's motor car. Uncle Guard cranked the engine. "Here we go," he shouted as he got in and sat behind the wheel. "Hooray," shouted the little girls. The engine sputtered, spewed smoke, and stopped. Uncle Guard climbed out, cranked the engine again, and climbed to the seat and said, "Here we go." "Hooray," cheered the little girls. The engine sputtered, spewed, and stopped again. Uncle Guard sighed. He climbed out of the motor car, lifted the hood over the engine, and stared at it with his hands on his hips. Bridget and Jenny sat for a while, but soon grew restless. They climbed out of the front seat and both held onto the steering wheel, pretending to drive. Nellie and Samantha got out of the car and went to stand next to Uncle Guard. Nellie's father had been a driver, and Nellie had spent many happy hours with him, watching him tinker with motor cars. Her father enjoyed showing her how motor cars had worked. "What's the trouble this time?" Uncle Guard muttered, mostly to himself. Nellie spoke up timidly. "It sounded like the carburetor to me," she said. "Do you mind if I take a look?" Uncle Guard threw back his head and laughed with delight. "By all means," he said. "You're quite a girl, Nellie. What would I do without you?" Nellie smiled rather weakly at Uncle Guard. She glanced at Samantha to see if once again Uncle Guard's praise had upset her. But Samantha had already turned away, so Nellie could not see her face. "Samantha," called Bridget, "get back in. We'll be your drivers. Where do you want to go?" "Drive me to Mount Bedford, please," said Samantha, playing along with Bridget and Jenny. "Yes, ma'am," the two little girls replied, delighted. Bridget and Jenny made engine noises and honking noises as they pretended to drive. They bounced on the seat so wildly that the whole motor car shook and the hood waddled over Uncle Guard and Nellie's heads. "Bridget and Jenny," said Nellie, "please stop bouncing." Bridget and Jenny stopped for a moment, but only for a moment. In no time, they were bouncing more than ever. Then Bridget honked the horn by mistake, which threw both little girls into gales of laughter. "Girls," scolded Nellie, annoyed. "Will you stop your nonsense, please?" "Nellie, you're such a spoiled sport," grumbled Bridget. "You're no fun," added Jenny. "Come on, Bridget and Jenny," said Samantha. "Let's go inside. The three of us can have more fun there. Uncle Guard and Nellie don't want us around here." "All right," said Bridget and Jenny agreeably. Immediately they clambered out of the motor car. Nellie poked her head out from under the hood. She watched Bridget and Jenny and Samantha go inside, laughing and chatting. Nellie had the same funny, left-out feeling she had at dinner the night before. "Bridget, Jenny, and Samantha," Uncle Guard said with a smile. "The gleesome threesome." All of a sudden, Nellie felt hurt. Bridget and Jenny liked being with Samantha more than they liked being with her. Now it was Nellie's turn to feel jealous. A few weeks later, on a balmy spring afternoon, Nellie heard Aunt Cornelia calling to her. "Nellie, dear girl, the cab is here," said Aunt Cornelia. "It's time to go." "Coming," Nellie answered. She clattered down the stairs and grabbed her coat and hat and followed Aunt Cornelia to the horse-drawn cab that was waiting outside. Aunt Cornelia smiled at Nellie when they were settled inside the cab. "Thank you for coming to me to the settlement house, dear," she said. "I do appreciate it." Nellie smiled. "Oh, I do love going with you." The settlement house was one place Nellie felt truly comfortable and useful. She went with Aunt Cornelia twice a week to the settlement house, usually after school. Samantha always chose to stay home with the two little girls. That meant that Bridget, Jenny, and Samantha spent more and more time together without Nellie, and Nellie and Aunt Cornelia spent more and more time together without Samantha. It seemed that as the weather grew warmer, Nellie and Samantha's friendship grew cooler. It hurt Nellie's heart, but she didn't know what to do. Though she didn't mean to, she seemed to damage her friendship with Samantha with each passing day. Nellie knew Samantha could see how impatient she was at school with the classes that weren't preparing her to support Bridget and Jenny if they had to live with Uncle Mike. At home, Samantha was always leaving Nellie with Uncle Guard and Aunt Cornelia, as if it was too hurtful to Samantha to be with the three of them. And whenever Nellie tried to help Samantha care for Bridget or Jenny, Samantha shooed her away. Just the other morning, Jenny was crying because she missed Ma'am. Samantha immediately gathered Jenny into her arms and murmured comforting words to her. Nellie felt neither wanted nor needed nor wanted. Oh, it was such a sorry tangle. Maybe we never should have come to live with Uncle Guard and Aunt Cornelia, thought Nellie. If she had known how it would damage my friendship with Samantha, I wouldn't have. Maybe it would be better if I left. Miss Brennan met Nellie and Aunt Cornelia at the door of the house. Miss Brennan threw her arms open. My two favorite helpers, she said. Good afternoon, said Nellie and Aunt Cornelia. They spoke at the same time, then laughed at themselves. You better hurry along, Mrs. Edwards, said Miss Brennan, her brisk, bossy, cheerful way. They're waiting for you in the cooking class. Miss Brennan put her head on Nellie's shoulder. I'm going to borrow Nellie for a while, if you don't mind. I promised her a chat and a cup of tea. It's high time I kept that promise. Miss Brennan smiled sheepishly. Also, the clock in my office stopped. I need the help of Miss Nellie O'Malley all mended to fix it. Very well, said Aunt Cornelia with a good humor. I'll do my best I can without Nellie to translate for me. Miss Brennan led Nellie to her office. Nellie fixed the clock, which really just needed to be wound and oiled. Then Miss Brennan poured them each a cup of tea. So then, she said, I know that many great things have changed in your life, but I hope you still like shortbread cookies. Nellie laughed. I do, she said. Miss Brennan sat down and sighed. Oh, it feels like going to sit down, she said. I'm that busy. But as my grandmother used to say, we're blessed with work. And I do feel blessed to have this job. Nellie sat forward. I've been wanting to ask you, how did you get this job? She asked earnestly. Did you have to go to a special school to be trained for it? Well, I was trained to be a teacher, said Miss Brennan. My parents died when I was young, like you. When I was about your age, I went to a boarding school in Boston on Beacon Street. It's called the Clark School. There were lots of Irish girls there like me. We were eager to be teachers instead of maids or factory workers as our own parents had been. I studied very hard and was very happy at the Clark School. She looked at Nellie with an interested expression. And are you happy at the fine school you're going to, Nellie? She asked. Nellie took a deep breath. No, she said, I am not. Mrs. Brennan sat back. I think you had better tell me all about it, she said. I feel very ungrateful, said Nellie, but I don't think the school Samantha and I go to is right for me. It's not preparing me to get a real job, one where I'd earn money to take care of Bridget and Jenny, though I promised my mother would. I'm going to need a real job because Nellie hesitated, then she told Miss Brennan the truth. You see, I haven't told anyone, but I ran into my Uncle Mike on the street a while ago. He threatened to come and take my sisters and me away from Uncle Guard and Aunt Cornelia and make us work in the factory again. He'll do it too. We're just lucky that so far he doesn't seem to know where to find us. Miss Brennan sighed a sad sigh that came straight from her heart. Ah, Nellie, she said, I'm sorry to have to tell you this. Your uncle was here the other day, full of bluster and swagger he was, and ranting and raving and asking questions about you and your sisters. Nellie shivered. She looked at Miss Brennan wide-eyed. You can be sure that I gave him a piece of my mind, and I sent him away, said Miss Brennan stoutly. I didn't tell him anything about you and your sisters, of course. I wouldn't give a hooligan like that the time of day. Nellie tried to keep her hand steady, but her teacup rattled as it sat on the saucer. Thank you for trying to protect us, Miss Brennan, she said, but I'm pretty sure my Uncle Mike will find us any day now. Nellie shook her head. I don't see how I can keep my promise to Ma'am to care for Bridget and Jenny if I'm working in the factory and Uncle Mike is drinking up all the money I earn. She said, that's what he did when we lived with us before. Then he abandoned us. After Nellie stopped talking, Miss Brennan was quiet and thoughtful, and then she said, well, Nellie, you are a smart and brave girl. You've had to carry more than your share of burdens all by yourself. But Now you live with good, kind people who love you. And I think you should tell them what you've told me. Mrs. Edwards mentioned that Mr. Edwards is a lawyer. We will know about laws that are intended to protect children like you and your sisters. Law that send bad people like your Uncle Mike to jail for abandoning children or mistreating them. I'm sure Mr. and Mrs. Edwards will try to help you. Nellie sighed. They'll try, she said, but if Uncle Mike comes... Miss Brennan leaned forward and took both of Nellie's hands into hers. Nellie, no matter what happens, you'll have to make a decision, she said. If your uncle comes and takes you away, or if you stay with Samantha and her aunt and uncle, it'll still be up to decide what you want your life to be like and who you want to be. You have to choose the future you want, and you have to find a path that'll get you here. Nellie spoke solemnly. I think I've decided, she said, nodding. I've decided right now. I want to be a teacher like you when I grow up. Miss Brennan squeezed Nellie's hands. That's the finest compliment I've ever heard, she said. She stood up, saying, but get away with you now before you turn my head with your compliments. Mrs. Edwards will be needing you to translate for her. Nellie handed Miss Brennan her cup and saucer. Thank you for tea, she said. I thank you even more for your help. Thank you for mending my clock, said Miss Brennan. Here's payment for you. Miss Brandon handed Nellie a coin. It's an old Irish coin, she said. Too old to buy anything, but maybe it'll remind you of your family's past while you're on your way in your future. Oh, Miss Brennan, said Nellie. I'll keep it with me always. Good, said Miss Brennan. She smiled. I'm proud of your decision, and I'm proud of you, Miss Nellie O'Malley all mended. Nellie had made another decision, too, that she had not told Miss Brennan about. That night, after everyone got to bed, Nellie slipped out from under her covers. She tiptoed to the bathroom, shut the door, and lit a candle. She took a sheet of paper, pen and ink, and an envelope where she had hidden in the linen closet. Nellie addressed the envelope first. She wrote, Clark School, Beacon Street, Boston, Massachusetts. Then she smoothed the sheet of paper flat. Then she wrote, Dear Sirs, I would like information on enrolling in your school. On a lovely spring night, about a week later, Uncle Guard, Aunt Cornelia, and Nellie were in the parlor reading. When Bridget and Jenny got upstairs a while ago, lured to bed by the promise of a story from Samantha. Aunt Cornelia looked at Uncle Guard. Darling, she said in a worried voice, you have such a long face. That letter you're reading is not from Aunt Cornelia stopped mid-sentence and glanced at Nellie. No, Uncle Guard said. Well then, asked Aunt Cornelia, is there bad news in the letter? Uncle Guard cleared his throat. Well, he said. His voice sounded odd. Well, this letter was addressed to the guardians of Miss Nellie O'Malley, so I opened it. It's from the Clark School in Boston. It says that Nellie is welcome to enroll there. What did you say? Asked Cornelia. The school in Boston? Both Uncle Guard and Aunt Cornelia turned to Nellie. They looked hurt and confused. Nellie felt terrible. She had expected that the letter from Boston would be addressed to her, so she would see it first. She never meant to spring such a sad surprise on Uncle Guard and Aunt Cornelia. Aunt Cornelia asked gently, Is that what you want, Nellie? To go to a school in Boston? Aren't you happy here with us? Nellie did not know how to explain that leaving seemed the only way to save her friendship with Samantha, and that at school in Boston she would learn to be a teacher so she could protect her sisters and keep her promise to Ma'am. She bent her head low. Just then, she heard a sound in the doorway. It was Samantha. Nellie looked at Samantha from under her mask. From the look on Samantha's white, frozen face, Nellie knew that she had heard everything. Nellie spoke quietly but firmly. I just think it would be best for everyone if I left. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.